Songs that rhyme remain among the most widely used pedagogic tools devised by humankind to imbue truths and attitudes into the minds of children. And over the course of the last century, major faiths have harnessed them to perpetuate their theology. For nearly 100 years, Christian guides have taught toddlers to rely on divine providence with the song, "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands." More recently, Islamic educators have trained toddlers to sense heaven's blessings in every single second with a song called Bismillah. And since 1972, when Rabbi Yosef Goldstein released his first volume of tunes under the name of Uncle Yossi, generations of Jewish children have given voice to the doctrine of God's omnipotence by singing, "Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere." It is a simple song that evokes a deep creed articulated by our sages in a pithy phrase, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Malei Kol HaOlam. God permeates all space. And that popular theology can be traced beyond our sages to the words of our kings and prophets, where David declared, "Im esak shamayim, if I soar to the heavens, sham ata, you are there. Atzia sha'ol, if I descend to the depths, hinecha, you are there too. Esak hanfei shachar, if I rise on the wings of dawn, eshkena ba'achrit yam, and fly to the ends of the seas, gam sham, you are there too." And his son Solomon the Wise reprises this theme in writing, "Nochach anei Hashem darchei ish, the eyes of God face the ways of men, v'chol maglotav mefales, and survey his every trail." And the pious Job agrees with Solomon, repeating almost word for word, "Einav al darchei ish, his eyes lie upon the ways of men, v'chol tza'adav yir'eh, and he sees his every step." And Jeremiah cites God himself confirming this creed in an exasperated rhetorical question. "Elokeimi karov ani," God says, "Am I just a close by God? V'elokeimi rachok, and not a far away God?" So for our kings and prophets and sages, every breath we take, every move we make, every step we take, every claim we stake, and bond that we break, he will be watching us. But if God is truly everywhere, something that we read in Shul this morning, which delineates a linchpin of Jewish history and Jewish practice, begs a rather important question. Moshe paints a picture of what the people can expect to see upon their entry into the land of their ancestors, and he gives them an unequivocal directive. Avdu sham hagoyim, the native tribes there. Et Elohehem el harim, they set up shrines to their gods on the hills and the high mountains, tachat kol eitz ra'anan, and beneath the leaves of every tree. And on seeing these shrines, were instructed not to convert the sites for the worship of the truly divine, but to destroy them. V'nitatztem et mazbechotam, v'shibartem al matzevotam, V'ibadatem et shamam min makom hahu, break their altars, smash their pillars, eradicate their name from that place, because Moshe says that our worship can never, ever echo theirs. Lo ta'asun ken la'Hashem l'kechem, do not do this to the Lord your God. Ki im al makom asher yivchar Hashem, you shall seek God only in the place that he will choose. Uvata shama, and you will go there. Hisham elacha, Moshe continues, be careful, be on guard, never to make an offering in a place of your choosing. Only in the place that God chooses. That's where you shall do all that I command you. And this is our question. If God is truly everywhere, in every tree and every leaf and every breeze, on every path and every street and field and each blade of grass, why are we forbidden to worship him anywhere? Why, if we feel so moved, can we not perform a sacred rite where we stand? Why are we denied this basic religious right to express our souls in the midst of life? Why are we forced at all times to trek to the temple? And there are two brief answers that I'd like to share with you today, starting with a rather reasonable, if depressing, view of a number of the medieval masters. And for them, our groundbreaking civilization was still in its infancy, and our ancestors were surrounded by the allures of idolatry which threatened to distort or kill our creed before it could take root. It is hard to overstate how persuasive these pervasive pagan practices were in the ancient world, where the clashing facts and forces of nature, from storms and the seasons to fertility and war, all had their own sacred patron, each of whom in turn sought the worship of sparring tribes. The idea that there is a single deity, a coherent structure to reality, and a system of norms and laws that calls us to esteem each member of humanity was so unintuitive and revolutionary that it would take the protracted and intensive attention of a team of committed teachers to shape the moral imagination of a people to last. For the Bechor Shor, the 13th century French commentator, if left in the hands of the masses, the sacrifices inspired by heaven would backslide into pagan rites, and our people's beliefs would revert to the inhumane but pervasive creed dominating the ancient Near East at the time. In his words, Im ya'asu b'chol makom, if we performed our sacrifices anywhere, yisbechu le'seirim, we would start making offerings to idols and icons and foreign gods. The ban against free worship of heaven was to prevent a relapse into the mythic systems which God revealed himself to contest. We, as a people, were forced to trek to the temple and prohibited from performing sacrifices on our own to protect our faith from becoming corrupted. Again, in the words of the Bechor Shor, Kishemevi leMikdash, when we were to come to the temple, umusar lekohanim, and hand over our practices to the priests, al karchu nikrav l'shamayim, everything would be offered for sure to God in heaven. So for the Bechor Shor and the Chizkuni and Gersonides, the reason that we could not worship God under trees or by the sea or in the fields and the streets was to shield our theology from inevitable decay. It was to ensure that every sacrifice could be supervised by the auspices of the high priest and keep our sacred rites beneath the trained and watchful eyes of the centralized spiritual bureaucracy. But there is another, radically different reading of the sacrificial exclusivity of Jerusalem, of the ban on private sacrifice and the insistence that if we wish to worship God, we need to trek to the temple. And for Shadal or Shmuel David Luzzatto, the 19th century Italian commentator, it has far less to do with protecting the integrity of religious ritual than promoting political prosperity. If we could simply perform the rites of thanksgiving or guilt wherever and whenever we please, our spiritual lives would come to be defined solely by our personal highs and lows. We would inevitably come to see our relationship with God as an individual bond between him and me, which deepens when I see beauty or I feel remorse or awe. We would all aspire to close our eyes and soar alone. So Shadal writes, Sivta Hashem, God commanded, Shelo yeh kol echad boneh bama la'atzmo, that no one shall make their own personal altar, letovat ha'umah v'atzlachata, in order to promote the good and the success of the nation, with a single site set aside for the performance of all personal and social and national rights. We would acquire a collective consciousness that binds us together as a people, forced to come together face to face and forge memories in a shared space. We would come to see each other as far more than fellow citizens, but as members of an extended family. In Shadal's words, Yitkabtzu kulam l'makom echad, gathering together into a single building. Yutamid la'aguda achad, would make us into a single guild. For him, theology can survive without centralization, but a sacred society cannot. If we are to learn to live together and flourish together and build together, we need to physically come together and see each other up close. Only if we share space, only if we come face to face, only if we leave our homes, open our eyes and embrace each other, can we thrive as a nation tied to a vision of a God-inspired human hope. And that, for Shadal, is what lives on in our shuls to this day. Shul is the place for which we, if we can, leave our homes to share space and pray to transform our neighbors with an embrace into more than friends or fellow citizens, but family. So may our shuls and our virtual collective space that is devoted to rituals and expressions of our faith also deepen our devotion to each other. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, and so is the call for us all to come together. Shavua Tov.